Hello and welcome to another episode of Punto How To. If you've been watching our recent videos, you will know that we have been doing what we can to bring the car up to scratch with a good clean, and I didn't do a bad job, it looked pretty smart. I then took off the front bumper to sort out the rather scruffy looking front badge and indicator problems. In this episode I'm going to be taking a look at this loose handbrake. It looks like the cables have stretched. It is still holding the car, but the handbrake just pulls further and further up. Before we do though, if you've enjoyed these videos, do consider clicking subscribe on the button just below the video. Also give us a thumbs up whilst you're there, it helps the YouTube algorithm and helps the channel. And why not drop a comment below if you're looking at tackling this job or if you're tackling any other jobs on your car at the moment. We always try and reply to the comments, so don't be afraid to leave us a message down below and we'll get back to you. So to begin with, I'm going to start by taking off the back wheel on the driver's side. The main reason for doing this is at the time of doing this video I had to do some work on the brake caliper as well, so I took the back wheel off just to give myself better access. I've got two brand new brake cables here, left and right, ready to go on the car. I think these cost about £10 from a parts supplier. Because I was changing the rear brake caliper, it gave me the opportunity to make it much easier to show you the back of the caliper. What I did was I started by removing the spring from the back of the handbrake lever on the caliper. I then removed the nut from the handbrake lever on the back of the caliper. This allowed me to very easily remove the cable from the lever. The other way to do this is to loosen all of the cables off in the cabin of the car first before you even start taking the brakes apart at the back. I only did it this way around because I was changing the rear caliper, so I knew I could loosen these parts and take them all apart to begin with. Once you've released the cable from the caliper, there are then several points along the route of the cable that the cable attaches to the chassis and the subframes of the car. So here is the first point on the back axle. So I'm just going to open up this metal clip with a screwdriver so that I can release the cable from that clip. Here's the next clip along, so you'll need to open that up as well to release the cable. And then looking back towards the front of the car, there are some more clips there along the metal that would be the bottom of the back seats, and then the cable turns as it goes up above the exhaust pipe and into the cabin of the car. Inside the cabin you will need to start removing the parts of the centre console to get to the handbrake mechanism underneath. It depends on what model of car you've got as to whether or not you've got the armrest. My car's got the armrest, which means it's got 3 bolts just hidden below this panel, which secure the armrest to the floor plan of the car. It's hard to see here because I'm working in quite a close space, but once you've got the armrest out of the way, or if you don't have the armrest fitted, you can then pull the next piece of plastic straight up. So get a hold of it quite firmly and then just pull it upwards. It's only held in with clips, and these will detach with a bit of a tug up towards the roof of the car. The handbrake lever is bolted to the floor of the car with 2 bolts, one on either side. One is at the front of where the lever mounts and the other one is at the back. Again, it's quite difficult to see because I'm working in a tight space and it's a bit dark in this gap between the seats, but hopefully you can see that little bolt just there. So using a long socket, I remove the 2 bolts, one at the front and one at the back, and then that loosens up the cables to be able to take the actual cables off the mechanism that attaches to the handbrake. If you were not taking the calipers off, this is where you'd start. So you remove the handbrake first and then it loosens all the cables up so that you can get the other ends of the cables detached from the brake calipers easily. Working on this was very difficult because I've got the armrest. It was very difficult to get underneath the metalwork that holds and supports the armrest. However, I did manage to get a camera in, and this hopefully shows you how you remove the cables from the back of the handbrake. you have to turn the cable through 90 degrees on this metal plate underneath, which is attached to the back of the handbrake, and then slip it out of its place. And then the same on the other side. You can help at this point. You can turn the plate a lot easier because you've only got one cable attached to it, and then it's just a case of pinging the cable out, which is easier said than done, as you can probably guess. And then once you've removed the cable from the plate, you can actually take the handbrake out completely, ready for when you put the new cables in. Just to prove a point here, it isn't always plain sailing when I make these videos. It can be an absolute nightmare sometimes to get these things apart. This isn't even seized or rusted or anything like that. I'm simply just trying to get a perfectly clean cable out the back of a perfectly clean metal plate. So that's it, that's the metal plate removed. The cables are now free in the car, and we can feed them out through the bottom of the car. So back underneath the car, we've got this problem with the heat shielding for the exhaust covering up the handbrake cables, and that is secured with these little round clips onto rather rusty screws. So we try and unscrew them as best we can with a pair of pliers. That doesn't really work, so in the end I ended up popping them off rather than being able to unscrew them. At this point I was losing the light, so I put a studio light underneath the car to try and be able to see what I'm doing. So going back underneath the car, if you look up just above the exhaust pipe here, you can see the two holes where the new cables are going to be going in. These are the old cables. This one had actually broken in the middle, which is probably why the handbrake was so bad. As you can see, they're in quite a state. All the rubbers and things are split, and it's just falling apart. Putting the new cables in is the reverse of removing the old cables. The side that goes underneath the exhaust heat shields, as you can see in this shot here, has a lot of extra insulation around it to protect it from the heat of the exhaust. It is just a case of getting it in the hole and pushing it as hard as you can in so that it clips in place. Now if you don't have the armrest with the large metal frame bolted in around your handbrake, you'll probably find this part's a lot easier for you. What I did here was remove the point where the handbrake cables connect to the handbrake. So what I then did, it's a bit difficult to film with one hand, but I manually hooked both cables into the metal plate, which I then put underneath the metal bracket that holds the armrest. As you can see here, now everything is underneath that bracket, and then it's very fiddly to get in there, but I did the bolt up from the handbrake onto the actual lever. So bolted the metal plate with the cables attached onto the handbrake lever after I'd put it all in. At this point I hadn't even bolted the handbrake to the ground, just to give me as much slack as possible. Once I'd bolted the handbrake lever back to the ground, I was able to adjust the handbrake up, which is again done by just turning the nut on the end of this cable where it meets the two handbrake cables coming into the car. That just tightens the cables a little bit each time, and then you can use that adjustment to try and get the handbrake just right. And then that way you don't have to pull the handbrake up too far to pull the handbrake on, and also you don't have it so that it's binding or catching the brakes when the handbrake is released. And that's it. That's how you change the handbrake cables on a Fiat Punto Evo. It is slightly different if you have the drum brakes on the back of your car. The main difference is you would have to take the drums off to get to the cables inside. This is a picture from a Mark II Punto, but it's very similar sort of setup. Once you've removed the drum, you just need to take one shoe out that is connected to the handbrake cable, and then unclip the cable from that brake shoe, and then with the new cable in place, just clip that back in again to the new to the brake shoe, and then reassemble the brake shoe back into the drum. So that's it for this video today. Hopefully you've enjoyed that and found it useful. If you have, do be sure to give us a thumbs up. Why not drop a comment below, like I said at the beginning of the video, and if you haven't already done so, why not subscribe today? click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button once you've clicked it, and that will give you notifications of when I upload new videos. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. If you're still here, why not check out some of our other videos? Click the links on the left of the screen and they'll take you to some of our latest videos or videos best for you. Subscribe on the right.